Welcome once again, my friends, and thank you for stopping by to listen to an old storyteller. Today we have a story from South Africa, and the title of this story is The Story of Tangalimlibo. There was once a man who had 2 wives, one of whom had no children. She grieved much about that, till one day a bird came to her and gave her some little pellets. The bird said she must eat of these always before she partook of food, and then she would bear a child. She was very glad, and offered the bird some millet. But the bird said, "No, I do not want millet." The woman then offered an isidanga, an ornamental breastband which women wear. But the bird said it had no use for that. Then she got some very fine gravel and placed before the bird, which it received at her hands. After this the woman had a daughter. Her husband knew nothing of what had happened, because he never went to her house. He did not love her at all, for the reason that she bore no children. So she said, "I will keep my daughter in the house till my husband comes. He will surely love me when he sees I have such a beautiful child." The name given to the girl was Tangalimlibo. The man went always to the house of the other wife, and so it happened that Tangalimlibo was grown to be a young woman when her father first saw her. He was very much pleased, and said, "My dear wife, you should have told me of this before." The girl had never been out of the house in the daytime. Only in the night time she had gone out, when people could not see her. The man said to his wife, "You must make much beer, and invite many people to come and rejoice with me over this that has happened." The woman did so. There was a big tree in front of the corral, and the mats were spread under it. It was a fine sunny day, and very many men came. Among them was the son of a certain chief, who fell in love with Tangalimlibo as soon as he saw her. When the young chief went home, he sent a message to the father of the girl that he must send her to him to be married. The man told all his friends about that. He told them also to be ready at a certain time to conduct his daughter to the chief. So they came and took her, and the marriage feast was very great. The oxen were many which were killed that day. Tangalimlibo had a large and beautiful ox given to her by her father. That ox was called by her own name. She took off a piece of her clothing and gave it to the ox, which ate it. After she had been married some time, this woman had a son. She was loved very much by her husband, because she was pretty and industrious. Only this thing was observed of her, that she never went out in the daytime. Therefore she received the name of Simhaba Nyanga, the walker by moonlight. One day her husband went to a distant place to hunt with other men. There were left at his home with this woman only her father-in-law, her mother-in-law, and a girl who nursed the little child. The father-in-law said, "Why does she not work during the day?" He pretended to become thirsty, and sent the girl to Tangalimlibo to ask for water, saying, "I die with thirst." The woman sent water to her father-in-law, but he threw it to the ground, saying, "It is water from the river I desire." She said, "I will never go to the river in the daytime." He continued to ask, saying again, "I die of thirst." Then she took a milk basket and a calabash ladle, and went weeping to the river. She dipped the ladle in the water, and it was drawn out by her hand. She dipped the milk basket into the water, and it was drawn away from her. Then she tried to take some water in her mantle, and she was drawn under the surface. After a little time the girl was sent to look for her, but she came back, saying, "I found her not, who is accustomed to draw water only in the night." Her father-in-law drove oxen quickly to the river. He took the big ox that was called by her name and killed it. He put all the flesh and everything else that was of that ox into the river, saying, "Let this be instead of my child." A voice was heard saying, "Go to my father and mother, and say to them that I am taken by the river." That evening the little child of Tangalimlibo was crying very bitterly. Its father was not yet home. Its grandmother tried by every means to keep it from crying, but in vain. Then she gave it to the nurse, who was fastened it on her back. Still the child continued to cry. In the middle of the night, the nurse went down to the river with the child, singing this song. It is crying, it is crying, the child of Simhamba Nyanga. It is crying, it will not be pacified. Then the mother of the child came out of the river and wailed this song. It is crying, it is crying, the child of the walker by moonlight. It was done intentionally by people whose names are unmentionable. They sent her for water during the day. She tried to dip with the milk basket, and then it sank. Tried to dip with the ladle, and then it sank. Tried to dip with the mantle, and then it sank. With the name as a chorus at the end of each line. Then she took her child and put it to her breast to suck. When the child had finished sucking, she gave it back to the nurse, telling her to take it home. She commanded the nurse never to say to anyone that she came out of the water, and told her that when people asked where the child got food, she must say she gave it berries to eat. That continued for some days. Every night the nurse took the child to the river, when its mother came out and suckled it. She always looked round to see that no one was present, and always put the same command on the girl. After a time, the father of the child returned from hunting. They told him of Tangalimlibo's going to the river and not returning. Then the nurse brought the child to him. He inquired what it ate, and was told that berries were given to it. He said, "That cannot be so. Go and get some berries, and let me see my child eat them." The girl went and brought some berries, but they were not eaten by the child. Then the father of the child beat the girl until she told the truth. She said she went at night to the river, when the mother came out and caressed her child and gave it of her milk. Then they made a plan that the husband of Tangalimlibo should hide himself in the reeds and try to catch his wife when she came out of the water. He took the skin of an ox and cut it in a long reim, one end of which he fastened round his waist. The other end he gave to the men of that village, telling them to hold it fast and to pull hard when they felt it being drawn from them. At night the man hid himself in the reeds. Tangalimlibo came out of the water and looked all around while she was singing her song. She asked the girl if anyone was there, and when the girl replied that there was no one, she took her child. Then her husband sprang upon her, and clasping her very tight. She tried to pull back, but the men at the village drew upon the reim. She was drawn away, but the river followed her, and its water turned into blood. When it came close to the village, the men who were pulling at the reims saw it and became frightened. They let the reim go, when the river at once went back, taking Tangalimlibo with it. After that her husband was told of the voice which came from the water, saying, "Go to my father and mother, and tell them I am taken by the river." He called his racing ox and said, "Will you, my ox, take this message to the father and mother of Tangalimlibo?" The ox only bellowed. He called his dog and said, "Will you, my dog, take this message to the father and mother of Tangalimlibo?" The dog only barked. Last of all, he called the rooster. He said, "Will you, my rooster, take this message to the father and mother of Tangalimlibo?" The rooster answered, "I will do so, my master." He said, "Let me hear what you will say." The rooster answered, "I will sing. I am a rooster that ought not to be killed. Cock-a-doodle-doo. I have come to intimate about Tangalimlibo. Cock-a-doodle-doo. Tangalimlibo is dead. Cock-a-doodle-doo. She dipped water for a person that cannot be named. Cock-a-doodle-doo. It was tried to send an ox. It bellowed. Cock-a-doodle-doo. It was tried to send a dog. It barked. Cock-a-doodle-doo." The chief said, "That is good, my rooster. Go now." As the cock was going on his way, some boys who were tending some calves saw him. One of them said to the others, Come here, boys. There is a rooster for us to kill." Then the rooster stood up and sang his song. The boys said, "Sing again. We did not hear you plainly." So he sang again. "I am a rooster that ought not to be killed, cock-a-doodle-doo. I have come to intimate about Tangalimlibo, cock-a-doodle-doo. Tangalimlibo is dead, cock-a-doodle-doo. She dipped water for a person that cannot be named, cock-a-doodle-doo. It was tried to send an ox, it bellowed, cock-a-doodle-doo. It was tried to send a dog, it barked, cock-a-doodle-doo." Then the boys let him go on his way. He traveled far from that place and came to a village where the men were sitting in the kraal. He flew up on the back of the kraal to rest himself, and the men saw him. They said, "Where does this rooster come from? We thought all the roosters here were killed. Make haste, boys, and kill him." The cock began to sing his song. Then the men said, "Wait, boys, we wish to hear what he says." They said to him, "Begin again. We did not hear you." The cock said, "Give me some food, for I am very hungry." The men sent a boy for some millet and gave it to him. When he had eaten, he sang his song. The men said, "Let him go," and he went on his way. Then he came to the village of the father of Tangalimlibo, to the house of those he was seeking. He told the message he was sent to carry. The mother of Tangalimlibo was a woman skillful in the use of medicines. She said to her husband, "Get a fat ox to go with us." They arrived at the river and killed the ox. Then that woman worked with her medicines while they put the meat in the water. There was a great shaking and a rising up of the river, and Tangalimlibo came out. There was great joy among those people when they took her home to her husband. Thank you once again for listening to this story. If you enjoyed this story, please press that like button. Also, please help an old storyteller out by subscribing to my channel. The next story will be posted in a few days, so until then, may your story continue to be a good one.